Okay, let's start with something pretty intense, but, well, something universally understood, I think. Imagine the worst kind of pain. Maybe losing a child.
Yeah, that level of grief. King Citraketu, he went through exactly that. Just this absolutely crushing grief. It's a raw human thing.
And that feeling like the whole world is just wrong.
Mm.
That's really our jumping off point for this deep dive. We're going to look at some honestly surprising ideas about suffering, relationships, even who we fundamentally are.
Right. And these insights come from ancient wisdom, so, prepare yourself. Some of this might really shift how you see things. It can be a bit mind-bending.
Definitely sounds like it. So where are we drawing this from? What are our sources?
Well, we've got quite a mix. There's the really moving story of the king himself, King Citraketu, but also some deep philosophical explanations that have been passed down.
Okay, so a combination of story and philosophy and the goal. What's our mission here?
Basically, to pull out the key ideas about why we suffer, the nature of it all, and maybe, just maybe, see if there's a path beyond it, according to these texts.
All right, let's jump in. The first big idea you mentioned. It really challenges how we think about family, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. We usually think of our family, parents, kids, as these, bedrock connections. Permanent.
Yeah, the most important ties we have.
But these sources suggest something pretty radical, that even these deep bonds are temporary. They're linked specifically to this body, this particular lifetime.
So not permanent fixtures at all. More like roles we play.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Like actors playing parts based on the script of karma for this life.
Okay, wow. And how does the story illustrate this? There's an intervention, right?
Yes, this is where the sage Nārada comes in. It's fascinating. He actually brings the king's dead son back briefly.
He brings him back, but not to stay.
No, exactly. It's more of a lesson for the grieving family. The son himself explains it.
What does he say?
He talks about how the soul travels through so many lives, so many different bodies, sometimes a demigod, sometimes an animal, sometimes human, like now. It all depends on past actions, on karma.
So being a parent or a child in this life, it's just one specific role, a temporary assignment.
Precisely. That's the core idea. It's a role you play for a time based on karmic connections.
It is. Yeah, that's mind-bending. It makes those connections feel very different.
There's an analogy used that might help. Think of gold. A piece of gold can be owned by many different people, right? It changes hands.
Sure.
But the gold itself remains gold. The soul is like that eternal, fundamentally unchanged, while the bodies and the relationships, the owners, keep changing.
Okay, I get that. So our really strong feelings, our attachments, they're aimed at the role, the temporary body, more than the eternal soul inside.
That's often the case, yes. We get attached to my son or my mother in this specific form, and here's where it gets even more unsettling, according to the sources.
Uh-oh, what now?
It suggests that sometimes someone who is, say, an enemy in a past life might show up as a relative in this life.
Seriously, like as a way to settle old scores.
Exactly, as a form of karmic settlement. And sometimes that settlement involves causing suffering to us, or us receiving suffering from them, even within a close family relationship.
Wow, okay, that puts a whole new spin on difficult family dynamics, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And there's another analogy like an animal that's sold. It might be attached to its owner, but once it's sold to someone new, it pretty quickly forgets the old owner and forms new attachments.
So the bodily connection fades quickly once the situation changes.
Right. The attachment is strong, but it's tied to that temporary bodily situation.
This really forces a reevaluation then. If finding parents or children is, relatively speaking, common in the cycle of lives.
Then what's truly rare, the texts emphasize, is finding a genuine spiritual guide, a real teacher, and making that connection to the divine.
So we pour immense energy into the temporary, maybe neglecting the path to something eternal.
That's the implication, yes. It challenges our priorities.
Okay, so if these relationships are temporary and potentially sources of pain, what does this say about material life in general? It sounds kind of bleak.
Well, the sources don't really sugarcoat it. One text states very directly that the relationship between a man and a woman is actually a primary source of suffering.
A major source.
Yeah.
Not just occasional difficulty, but a major source.
That's the statement. And it adds that both people in the relationship tend to suffer almost equally. It suggests our deepest desires for connection here often contain the seeds of pain.
That's quite a stark view. But what about people who avoid relationships? Are they free from this suffering?
Interestingly, no, not necessarily. The Vedic view suggests a person often feels incomplete without a partner, leading to its own kind of suffering, a sense of lack, of something missing.
So you suffer if you're in one, potentially, and you suffer if you're not. Sounds like a catch-22.
It does seem that way from a purely material standpoint. The potential for suffering is inherent in the situation, one way or another, and this even applies to those who formally renounce worldly life.
You mean like monks or ascetics? Even they aren't immune.
The sources say that even brahmacharis, celibate students, or sannyasis, those in the renounced order, can still struggle intensely with attachment to the opposite sex. The desire itself can persist, sometimes even stronger because of the restriction.
So the mental attachment, the desire, can cause suffering even without the external relationship.
Exactly. It highlights how deep these material inclinations run.
It makes you think about, like, pop culture, all the songs, movies about love, finding the one, but also heartbreak, separation.
Right, and the source actually mentions that, how someone who's maybe never even had a serious relationship can hear a sad love song and suddenly feel this pang of loss or longing.
Yeah, it triggers something even without direct experience. Shows how pervasive that whole complex of attachment and potential suffering is.
Absolutely. And there's a really powerful, almost shocking statement from Kapila Muni in the Srimad Bhagavatam,
What does he say?
addressing women specifically. He says that marriage, home, kids, it can be like listening to a sweet song that ultimately leads you towards death.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
It implies that even seemingly happy situations can entangle you and lead to deeper suffering in the long run.
That's the interpretation, yes. It's about the entanglement in temporary things. We also see the example of King Purava.
What happened with him?
He was deeply attached to a celestial nymph named Urvashi. When she left him, he was completely devastated. The texts describe him as becoming almost crazed, just wandering in grief.
So, a clear example of how breaking these strong material bonds can lead to immense suffering.
A very vivid one, yes.
Okay, so if our bodies, our relationships, all this material stuff is temporary and potentially full of suffering, what isn't? What's actually real and lasting?
This is where we get to the core teaching about the soul. The sources are very clear. The soul, the Atma, is eternal. No beginning, no end.
Completely separate from the body, then.
Fundamentally distinct, yes. The body is just a temporary covering, a vehicle. Identifying with the body, thinking I am this body, is described as the fundamental illusion, the root of the problem.
And the soul, it's connected to something bigger, right? The divine.
Yes. Qualitatively, the soul shares the same nature as the Supreme Lord Eternity, knowledge, bliss, Satchitananda. But quantitatively, we're different, infinitesimally small.
How small?
The texts give an analogy. 1/10,000th of the tip of a single hair, so incredibly tiny compared to the Supreme.
So it's the same quality, like a spark in the fire, but vastly different quantity.
Exactly. That concept's simultaneous oneness and difference is key. It's called a Sintapeta Petatattva.
Okay, and then there's this other concept, Maya, the illusion. How does that fit in?
Maya is the Lord's illusory energy. Think of it like a fog or a veil. It covers the soul's true awareness.
And why does it cover us?
Because of our desire for independent enjoyment, separate from the divine.
Yeah.
This desire leads us into Maya's influence, getting us entangled in the material world, chasing temporary pleasures.
And the Lord himself is also involved somehow, inside us.
Yes, the Supreme Lord resides within the heart of every living being as the supersoul, the Paramatma. He's like an inner witness and guide.
A guide, how so?
He observes our desires, our karma, and he provides the intelligence and directs our wanderings through different lives and experiences according to those desires and past actions.
So, he's there, witnessing, facilitating our journey based on our own choices and karma. Okay. Given all this, entanglement, suffering, illusion, how do we get out? Is there a path?
There is. The primary path emphasized in these sources is bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion.
And the first step seems crucial based on Citraketu's story, detachment.
Yes, detachment from material enjoyment is really important for understanding bhakti. Citraketu's intense grief actually created that necessary detachment. Paradoxically, it cleared the way.
So the suffering opened a door, and then Nārada gave him something, a practice.
He gave him a specific, powerful mantra. It addresses the Lord through his different expansions or aspects, names like Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Sakarana, and also invoking the primordial sound, Aka.
And these names, they have power.
Yes, they're described as being non-different from the Lord himself, full of spiritual potency, infallible, embodying bliss and knowledge. Reciting them connects you directly.
And Citraketu practiced this. How?
He was very focused. The text says he fasted and chanted this mantra with intense concentration for just 1 week.
Only a week? What happened?
The results were remarkably fast. On a material level, he gained leadership over a group of celestial beings called the Vigidayas. That was kind of a side effect.
The side effect. What was the main result?
More importantly, spiritually, he attained shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Anantadeva, a primary expansion of the Supreme Lord.
Wow. So that 1 week of focused practice brought both material position and spiritual realization.
Exactly. It really highlights the power of pure devotional service. It can grant both types of results, though the spiritual is the ultimate goal.
Okay, so he achieves this divine vision. What was that experience like for him, seeing Lord Anantadeva?
It was transformative. The moment he saw the Lord, the texts say, all the remaining material contamination was just washed away, purified instantly.
Just by seeing.
Yes. It emphasizes the immense purifying power of directly perceiving the divine. It's compared to how seeing the deity form in a temple can purify the devotee's consciousness.
And emotionally, what did he feel?
Initially, just overwhelming ecstasy, tears of love, spiritual bliss. But then, regaining his composure, he offered prayers with a clear, controlled mind.
And what was the essence of his prayers? What understanding did he express?
His prayers showed really deep insight. He glorified the Lord as being unconquerable by any force except the pure love of his devotees.
Conquered by love.
Yes, by devotees who are desireless, who have their senses under control, and who see all beings equally. The classic example is Krishna's relationship with the gopis in Vrindavan. He becomes subordinate to their pure love.
That's a beautiful concept. What else did he understand?
He contrasted this pure devotion with materialistic worship, like praying to demigods for temporary benefits. He called that unintelligent.
Why unintelligent?
Because you're chasing fleeting things. However, he also noted something interesting. Even if someone approaches the Supreme Lord with material desires, that approach itself gradually purifies them.
How does that work?
There's an analogy of a roasted seed. Once a seed is roasted, it can't sprout again. Similarly, approaching the Supreme Lord, even for material things, eventually roasts the seeds of material desire so they don't lead to further entanglement. Purification happens.
Okay, that makes sense. So approaching the Supreme is always beneficial, eventually. And this leads to the idea of Bhagavata Dharma.
Exactly. Bhagavata Dharma is presented as the highest, purest, religious principle, unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service to the Supreme Lord, Krishna. It's universal, free from envy, all about surrender.
And the recommended practice for that, especially now.
For this current age, Kali Yuga, the texts strongly recommend chanting the holy names of the Lord, specifically the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, as the most effective means of purification and connection.
Okay, so after Citraketu's prayers and realization, the Lord responds. What were the key philosophical points the Lord made?
Well, first, the Lord confirmed that Citraketu had indeed attained perfection. Then he elaborated on reality. He explained there are basically two kinds of substance. The real spiritual substance, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, and the illusory, which is the temporary material world and our activities within it.
And he explained that phrase, I am everything. How did he clarify that?
He clarified that it means his energies constitute everything, the physical elements, the living beings. We are all parts of his energy, but we are not identical to him in all respects. It refutes the idea that we just merge and lose individuality completely.
So connected, part of the whole, but still individual parts.
Yes, emphasizing the soul as an eternal individual part. He also used a dream analogy.
Yes.
Like experiences in a dream feel real, but are temporary and ultimately illusory upon waking. Our material experiences are similar. The key is to remember the Lord, the waker, even within the dream of material life.
And he's stressed again why we're in this dream.
Yes, reiterating that conditional life starts when we forget our true spiritual identity and instead identify with these temporary material roles and bodies.
And the way out.
He highlighted the special opportunity of human life. The source mentions India specifically as a place conducive to this for achieving self-realization. He cautioned against actions performed for their fruits, karmakata, and strongly advocated for desireless devotional service, bhakti yoga, as the path to liberation.
And the ultimate understanding remains that qualitative oneness, quantitative difference.
Exactly. That essential relationship between the individual soul and the supreme soul.
This is all incredibly deep. But, making it practical, how does someone actually start to perceive this super soul within, as the text suggests? Is there a practical process described?
Yes, actually, one of the purports lays out a kind of step-by-step process for self-reflection that can lead towards that perception.
Oh, interesting. What are the steps?
Okay, so roughly, it starts with just basic self-awareness. I exist, recognizing your own consciousness.
Right. Step 1, I am.
Then step 2 is distinguishing yourself, the seer, the conscious observer, from everything you observe: your body, your thoughts, the world around you, seeing the difference between the subject and the objects.
Okay, seer and seen. Got it.
Step 3 involves realizing your dependence. You see that your ability to act or perceive relies on external energies and, crucially, on a higher intelligence organizing things. You don't control everything.
Recognizing limitation and dependence. Okay.
4, understanding the senses themselves, how they work, how they interact with the material world, and recognizing that the experience of perception is material, even if the perceiver isn't.
Getting how the machinery works.
Step 5 is the dawning realization. Wait, if all this I'm observing is material and temporary, then I, the observer, must be spiritual. This might come with a sense of dissatisfaction with purely material life.
The spiritual realization hits.
Step 6, recognizing that superior intelligence, again, the one that allows your own intelligence to function, that coordinates the laws of nature. You see, there's a higher guiding force.
Acknowledging the supersoul's presence.
7, understanding that this supersoul is influencing you based on your own desires and karma, but also providing guidance. You realize you have a choice. Follow material illusion or align with that inner spiritual guidance.
The moment of choice, aligning intention.
And finally, step 8 is consciously choosing to align your intelligence with the supersoul, understanding your eternal relationship, qualitatively one, quantitatively different, and trying to live and act in harmony with that inner divine guidance, making it real in daily life.
Wow, that's quite a roadmap for inner exploration. Starts simple, gets profound.
It provides a framework for contemplation, yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, pulling all these threads together, the grief, the temporary nature of things, the soul, the path of devotion, what's the main takeaway for you?
For me, the really powerful message is that sincere, focused spiritual practice, especially when you have authentic guidance, can genuinely transform you. It can lead to a real connection with the divine that goes way beyond any temporary material gain or loss.
Even if material benefits sometimes come along, like with Citraketu.
Right, those might happen, but they're secondary. The real value, the treasure, is that inner purification, that spiritual awakening, building that loving relationship with the Supreme. That's the core.
It definitely sounds like a profound journey, not just a quick fix or an intellectual exercise.
Absolutely. It's about transformation.
Yeah.
But the path is laid out, and the possibility for real change is there.
So for you listening, maybe something in this resonated. Perhaps it's worth considering, is there an authentic spiritual path or practice that calls to you? Maybe think about how even one small, sincere step in that direction could start to shift how you see things, how you understand yourself, and your place in the universe. Definitely something worth contemplating.